When does it start in the morning?
So the Boston Marathon starts, we go off at 10 a.m. The elite females go off at 9:32 because they try to get them coming across the same time as the men. But all the main packer runners start at 10 a.m.
And what time was the bomb?
I think it was, let's see, I ran 3, 4. I think it went up about 3:30 maybe.
Oh, I
yeah.
understand. I thought it was earlier.
Yeah.
Like I'm a reporter, so I know things.
No quote.
So this is your name, is Front Corporal?
Yes, sir.
That's how you spell it, correct spelling?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Well, maybe you all running.
Yeah, we're all going,
right?
yeah.
Running, he's running, you rolling. Maybe you could just kind of tell us a little bit about the experience of going back there again. You've been there before. How was it this year? What was different about it, and how did you do with the run?
Okay, so obviously this year's Boston Marathon was obviously really special to run. There was a lot of memorials for all the runners that unfortunately lost their lives and were injured leading all the way up to the marathon and during marathon weekend. There was a lot of public memorials, there were a lot of prayer sessions, there was a lot of vigils going on. And being able to run the Boston Marathon is just an unbelievable experience. The crowds, there was probably, they were saying well over 1 million people that actually watched the race compared to about 500,000 last year. So the crowds were just humongous. The interesting thing was out there is no matter where I was running along the course, everyone was actually thanking me for running, coming out to their city and running their marathon, which I thought was really special. I run marathons all over the United States and the world, and I've never really been thanked for coming out to run a marathon before. So it was really neat having hundreds of people thanking you during the whole journey from Hopkinton down to Boston. Some of the interesting things along the course, when you were running along, there was pretty much a police officer every 50 feet along the whole course. So obviously law enforcement, there was a big presence there. I've worked some of the Super Bowl events and some of the NCAA Final Four events, and I've never seen a law enforcement showing that there was in Boston. They did a really excellent job of just keeping all the runners and all the fans safe during the race. Let's see, when I was running, some of the interesting things, there was, running around a corner, you actually see rows of 15 people deep watching you along the course. And they were just all, you know, saying your name and throwing out, saying your bib number or whatever. So it was really special, just the city of Boston and everyone kind of taking back the marathon, given the events that actually happened last year.
Were you worried about security?
I was not, no. And I think partly it's because I work for the Dallas Police Department, but
yeah.
I know what security can do and what they can do, and they were well prepared. I mean, it was actually really interesting just to see all the security protocol that you had to go through, how many times you had to show your bib, how many times you had to tell where you're from or whatever. And obviously they restricted your bags where we couldn't carry any bags out to where we started and along the course. So
being in the Fusion Center, you know a thing or two about intelligence and how little pieces of information fit together and things. And so when you go back there and run it again this time, are your eyes seeing things differently than you might have before?
Yeah, very much so. So I think as the officer, you're always alerted to look at your surroundings or whatever. So I kind of paid attention to where all the officers were on the course, and I saw SWAT officers on top of the buildings and some of just the protocol you had to go through just to get into the secure zones or whatever. So, and I actually saw some officers coming up to runners that didn't look like they were runners, even though they had a bib on, and they were kind of questioning them just to make sure that in fact they were there to run the marathon. So
you can see it from the side of security, but also from the side of a citizen,
yes,
a runner going through all of this. And so given all of that, did you feel different about it, that being a runner, that they were doing the things they should do?
Yeah, I think they were doing the things they needed to do. Obviously, what happened last year, just given the circumstances, they needed to make sure that this Boston Marathon was going to go off without any hitch. And obviously it did. It was a well-organized and just an amazing running experience, being able to run with that many people and that many ceremonies and tributes to all the fallen and injured runners.
Were you surprised that Kenyon didn't win?
No, I actually wasn't. I was, that was one of the probably neatest stories that came out from the Boston Marathon, was that we had a U.S. runner, Matt Kefleski, win the marathon, because he came into it, even though he's a tremendous runner, they weren't expecting him to win. So for him to come out of the blue and just, win the marathon is obviously, and he's an American, is obviously an unbelievable, experience for him and everyone, all of those runners too, to see an American win.
What was your time on the course?
My time was 2:57:33.
So, a good time for you?
Yeah, that's one of my better times, yeah.
You mentioned that there were people who were thanking you and a lot of people along. What is it that you think they were thanking you for?
I think they were thanking us for not giving in to the events that happened last year and, allowing us to come back and actually claim back the marathon and claim back the city and basically say, hey, listen, one incident is not gonna overshadow the totality of the circumstances, and let's do this marathon and put on a good showing.
Do you think there were people there that may have been a little bit nervous about being there?
I didn't see any of that when I was out there. I really did, and I think the city of Boston, the state of Massachusetts, and the federal government did an excellent job of, securing and just having all the protocols necessary to make the runners feel safe.
Did you say this was your 5th
This is my 5th Boston.
Boston? You've been running for a long time now.
Yes, sir, I have. I've been running a long time.
How old are you?
I'm 40.
40?
Yeah.
And so how long do you have to prepare for a race like this?
Well, I'm a little bit different than most runners. I pretty much run a marathon every 2 to 3 weeks. So, but typically speaking, an average runner will prepare anywhere between 3 and 5 months to run a marathon.
And what were the stages like going through to reach the finish line?
It was just the sheer amount of people that you were seeing along. It started off, you started off your race really kind of running slow because there's so many people at the start. So you're running not your pace. So after the first couple miles, you're finally able to settle into your running pace and kind of run the pace that you're able to running. But my first couple miles were a little slower just because it's such a narrow road that you start on Hopkinton, and it kind of spreads out. So you just kind of gotta wait for your time and then get into your normal pace and go with it.
Is there a fatigue time that hits your body at a certain stage in the race, or?
I haven't found that yet. So, but now that you say that, I might someday. I haven't found that yet. So yeah.
You run so many marathons.
I do, yeah. I do, yeah.
You have to qualify.
You do. Boston's the only marathon in the world that you actually have to qualify, and the qualifying times are age related. So they're broken up into 5-year age groups. So like 30 to 34 has to run a certain time, a 35 to 39, and 40 to 44. And what you do is you have to run a marathon, and then you submit your time to the Boston Marathon, and then based on all the entrants from around the world, they'll tell you if you got in or not based on the age-related times.
Really?
This year they opened it up to people who submitted essays. Did you know about
Yes,
that?
I did, yeah.
Did you happen to meet any of those runners?
I did not, no.
When you asked about when you said before about the police questioning people who maybe didn't look like runners,
Yeah.
I wondered if it was
Yeah.
one of the people.
No, I do not know that, but I think I did read an article that they had submitted like 450 essay or something like that were able to run the Boston. And then, of course, there was a lot of charity runners as well. The Boston Marathon is an extremely giving and charitable organization. So I think I remember reading somewhere that there was 9,000 charity runners that had raised money for certain foundations or for the Boston Strong Fund or whatever to help all the disabled and injured runners.
You covered this, but what we got here just a
Yes,
tad
sir.
late. What was the most emotional thing that did you have a chance to emotionally think about what happened last year versus this year when you were running?
Yeah, I think so the day before the marathon, it's called a marathon store. It's right near the finish line of the Boston Marathon, and that's where the first blast went off, right across from the store in the garbage can there. And I went there the day before the marathon this year, and there was just a lot of thank you signs and a lot of flowers and a lot of people signing stuff, just remembering the victims that were lost limbs and that were killed right outside that store when the first bomb went off. So I think that kind of put it in perspective for me, the enormity of the situation, just given what had happened a year ago to now.
Were you conscious of security as you were running yesterday?
I was, just because I work in law enforcement, so I recognize all the law enforcement that were on the course. I think I alluded to earlier, probably every 50 feet I saw an officer of some sort along the 26 miles. So if you do that numbers, that's quite a few.
And what was your time again? I apologize.
2:57:33.
Were there any people in your group that were there last year that experienced any of the aftermath?
In my particular group, yes, there was. Yes, yeah.
And did you observe their emotions or talk to them about
Yeah,
that?
I did. Yeah, a couple of my good friends had run last year, and then came back this year. And I think that we all had the sense of we just wanted to go out and, you know, run Boston and just show everyone that, hey, listen, just because you have a tragic event, we're not gonna let that stop us from continuing to run this event that's obviously the world's oldest and most run marathon, you know, longevity-wise. It was the 118th year of the running of the marathon, so it's the longest running marathon in the world, so we didn't want that to stop just because of one, you know, one event.
And at the time you crossed that finish line near where the blast occurred last year, did you have any emotions or witness any emotions from people as you came to that point?
Yeah, the one thing I did notice is that there was a lot, just all the volunteers, whether they were the people handing out the medals, the medical staff, all the race committee people, they were all just, everyone was just saying, thank you for coming out. Thank you for coming out. And I found myself saying that more than probably they were, just because I was so happy to, A, get done with this event, and B, to have everyone thanking you. So I kept just, you know, saying, hey, thanks for coming out. The volunteers out there are amazing. I mean, there's over 10,000 people that volunteer for that marathon, you know, and the medical people, I mean, giving all their time just for the runners along the course. It made it really special.
So was there any thought for next year?
Yeah, I'll be going back out next year. Yeah, yeah. It's one of my favorite events. It's one of my favorite events to do in the entire world. So it's just the vibe out there that goes along with the city of Boston. All the runners there are actually runners. They all have neat stories. You get to meet a lot of people from all over the world. You know, hear about their running adventures and their stories or whatever. So
Is it a tough race?
it is a tough race.
A lot of hills?
Yeah, I've learned over the years. Yeah, so the first 13 miles or so is pretty flat and downhill.
Yeah.
But if you don't run a smart race between 16 and 21, the hills will eat you
Okay.
up a little bit. So.
Very good.
Thank
Thank you,
for-
sir.
Just for the record.